I'm the Ghost of Brian, and I watched a movie. It's the 5th episode of the series, and you know what that means.
Midpoint musical.
Yes, it's midpoint musical time, a Ghost of Brian tradition since way back. And while I constantly hold out hope that the guys will send me something fun or a classic to enjoy, I'm sure they have quite the mess waiting for me. Lay it on me. Oh no. You know what? I'm going to argue that Grease 2 is not that bad. I'm serious. Now, Grease 2 is objectively a terrible sequel to one of the most beloved musicals and movies of all time, but looked at from a certain point of view, I think we can pull out some positives. I'm not saying it's a good movie, or even a good bad movie, but is this the disaster everyone insists? Oh, okay. Any successful movie will automatically inspire thoughts of sequels. You've already got an established world that the audience accepts and is apparently invested in, likely with a set of characters whose motivations and backstory are familiar. That means the first act of the story for the sequel is already done. Sequels tend to fall into a few categories. Normally, the main cast continue their adventures in the same universe. The events of the first movie form the basis of the sequel, sometimes within a larger narrative. Alternatively, the main character can continue within the rules of the same universe, but little of the original story affects the new movie. It might even be a new genre or style. This is similar to how many sitcoms and comic book movies operate. Alternatively, a sequel can change focus entirely to a secondary character or events adjacent to the original in a spin-off style story. The problem with this last style is that it very often doesn't work. The loss of the main characters can easily drive away the audience of the first movie, and it's a challenge to draw new people into the sequel if they didn't care about the original. After all, what's a sequel without the star attractions? Movies trying to rehash the same ground with new faces can look pretty obvious, and those movies are called lazy cash grabs. When you think about 1978 Grease, what comes to mind? Danny Zuko and Sandra Dee, of course. Are they in Grease 2? Nope. Well, how about the rest of the classic T-Birds and Pink Ladies? Only Frenchie shows up in this one, and then only briefly. Alright, well, the songs, of course. The songs, legendary music that made the soundtrack the second highest selling album of that year, and which still appears on the Billboard Top 200 albums of all time. Not soundtracks, albums. Part 2 must have great classic music, right? Yeah, and more on that later. Okay, well, Thunder Road. I mean, the T-Birds versus the Scorpions, racing through the LA River in classic muscle cars. Really? Okay, the Diner? Rydell High? Yay. Okay, so I guess I should actually watch this, sequel. Michael, Frenchie's cousin from the UK,
All the way from England by the name of Michael Carrington.
All right, now let's all say hello.
has come to Rydell for reasons, and instantly has the hots for Stephanie. Played by Michelle Pfeiffer in an early role, and I don't blame him. They're a bit star-crossed in that she's a pink lady.
You see, Stephanie Zanoni is a pink lady, which means if you're not a T-Bird, which you are not, you can look, but don't touch.
And lets him know she's more into cool riders than straight-A student.
No ordinary boy is gonna do. I wanna ride that.
Conflict established. In a series of events that in no way resembles the first movie, Mikey sets out to change himself into what his destined beau apparently wants in a man, and becomes said cool rider. This works really, really well.
That's dangerous!
Eventually, Mikey manages to have a moment with Stephanie and establishes a bit of a Clark Kent, Superman, Lois Lane love triangle.
Actually, I think you're kind of terrific.
Get out of here.
The T-Birds, now on motorcycles for some reason, aren't cool with this and give chase. Cool Rider rides his bike off an inconveniently placed jump. Despite all to the contrary, Stephanie assumes the worst, but he inexplicably survives. And I mean inexplicably in that it is never explained.
And I'll never see him again.
Come on.
Bing bang boom, love blossoms. Moral of the story is, change yourself so the hot girl will love you. It is a pretty bland retread of Grease 1. Since it's a musical, let's talk about the music. Disclaimer, musical taste is subjective. Grease 1 was known for its songs. I mean, I'm not the biggest Grease fanboy, but you have to respect the music. Songs and musicals are tools to move the story, expand our understanding of the characters, establish motives, and really bring the story to life in ways that traditional dialogue or action can't. Example, the first song in Grease is Summer Nights. It's not only super catchy, but it does a huge amount of heavy lifting for a single 3-minute song. It establishes the entire backstory between Danny and Sandy, the whole summer loving angle. It sets up the conflict where Danny's school machismo doesn't match how he treated Sandy over the summer. It gives us some understanding of the characters of the T-Birds and the Pink Ladies. It even gives us a tour around Rydell High. On the other hand, the first real song of Grease 2 is Back to School. The song tells us that the kids, shown on screen, are going back to school, which is already on screen and was established by the dialogue of the returning faculty. It's telling us what we already know, and it isn't even sung by the cast. In its defense, maybe this is more like the opening song of Grease, Grease is the word. The second song of Grease 2 is called Score Tonight, which is a not at all veiled reference to sex, 'cause teenagers be horny, and is about bowling. This is sung while the teenagers flirt and bowl. It's telling us what we already know, and unfortunately, it's pretty mediocre. So let's look at the rest of the songs and kind of give them a score. Again, subjective. Our third song is Brad, which has nothing to do with the plot other than introducing the subplot of there being a talent show. And this brings up a whole new can of worms. In a universe where people break out into song and dance numbers all the time, to have a talent show seems really strange. I don't know, it's hard enough to wrap your head around the musical as it is without this weird second musical thing going on. And I wouldn't even bring it up, except one of the best songs in the entire movie happens to be one of the production numbers in the talent show. Regardless, Brad is not very good. The next song is Cool Rider. Finally, a song with actual meaning.
One fun night, I'll be holding on tight.
This establishes Stephanie's desires and kicks off the plot. It is, though, in my opinion, pretty bland. I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer does give it her all, and that part's entertaining, but it isn't particularly great. B-. Reproduction is a song about how teenagers be horny. And honestly, it's a pretty funny song, but it has nothing to do with the plot, and it's performed by a chorus of background characters and faculty. Back to the talent show, we get Mr. Sandman, and then we move on to Who's That Guy? Which, glory be, is actually related to the plot and isn't entirely awful. And it has the main cast singing. Holy cow, I think I need a drink. Moving on. Oh, right. Right. This scene, this song, this, right. Serious moment. This scene and the accompanying song involves one of the T-Birds, DiMucci, convincing his girlfriend Sharon, or should I say tricking his girlfriend, into giving up her virginity by taking her into a bomb shelter and having his associates fake a nuclear attack. No, I am not kidding. Yes, the song is about this. The song is Do It For Your Country, with do it being the sex part, and the for your country being the fact that DiMucci suggests he's going to sign up for the army, and it would be patriotic of Sharon to send him off. Ignoring the meaning, the song is really catchy and is maybe the second best song on the soundtrack. But, for the record, I am not a lawyer. While I don't think it's illegal to trick your girlfriend into thinking World War III has started, it is despicable and super creepy.
We owe it to our country.
Let's do it for our country. Our country wants us to.
that's all I have to say about that.
The next song is Prowlin'. It isn't anything sexual, thankfully. It's mostly a pretty bland song about driving around, with a few insights into the T-Bird's preferences for the ladies. Moving on, Michael Fink sings or whisper sings a song about how screwed up his life is, called Charades. Tone-wise, it's fine. It's a woe is me, dark part of Act 2 song, but it isn't very good. C-. At the talent show, we get a huge production number called Girl for All Seasons that's really good and has some great moments for the characters. It is arguably the best 3 minutes of this entire movie. Moving on, Hands of Time is a pretty stock musical number. It's entirely almost okay. And we end on a luau number that's clearly supposed to be a callback to the fair at the end of Grease 1. It's really bland. Going back to my thesis, Grease 2 isn't that bad. It isn't a good movie, but the worst part of Grease 2 is in the name. If you were to strip out every reference to Grease, Rydell High, the Pink Ladies, the T-Birds, all of that, you could have a movie and a musical that was pretty bland, but it wouldn't constantly be compared to the juggernaut that is Grease. It's lighting a candle against the sun. You just have no hope. If they wanted to do a decent sequel, they needed to move away from the Grease formula. Have it take place in the 60s. Make it a female lead. Some new message, some new style of music, some new anything to get it out of the glaring brightness that was Grease. The plot itself is pretty bland, and that's pretty typical for a musical. It's really kind of let down by the songs. A couple of them aren't bad. They would be the functional middle songs of another musical, but you need a few set pieces to really bring things home. Girl for All Seasons works, except it's on stage and weird, and the only other good songs are either incredibly creepy or have no impact on the plot. Ultimately, Grease 2 is a 3-star movie that gets knocked down to a 2-star movie because of you know what, and the fact that it's Grease 2. If this was just random high school musical, it'd be a 3-star. People would be far more forgiving, and it probably just would have kind of been forgot as a weird 80s musical that helped kick off Michelle Pfeiffer's career. I'm the Ghost of Brian, and I watched a musical.